Hello my friends and welcome to this little corner of the world. This is actually my first video here on YouTube and I was thinking what can I do, there are so many options here. So I thought I would give you my ideas, my thoughts, my reflections on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. Once again, there are so many options here and I was like, I have to choose a book that is really important to me. Conrad is particularly important to me because, actually, I'll share this with you guys. I keep a picture of him on my writing desk, as a matter of fact. So, I mean, that by itself tells you that this is a writer that I really respect. One of the many reasons why I like Conrad is because he's kind of a muse to me. He was an ESL writer in many ways. As you know, English was not his first language. English is not my first language, as you can probably tell by my accent. So to me, that is very important. I derive a lot of inspiration from that. So basically what I want to do is I want to share with you my reflections. Reflection is a word that I chose because I think it fits the kind of thing that I plan to do on this channel. I think in a way everything that we see, everything that we contemplate is a mirror. And we see ourselves reflected in everything that we look at, in everything that we read, in everything that we watch in terms of movies and stuff like that. So I think reflection is a pretty accurate way of going about it when it comes to sharing my thoughts about all these books, movies, and whatever else I'm going to be doing here. So first, let's talk a little bit about the context. Heart of Darkness is one of Joseph Conrad's most widely read books, because it is so brief, right? 100 and something pages basically in most editions. So it's very easy to work with. Professors assign it to their classes. This might be one of the reasons why you're watching the video. That's wonderful. That's great. It's also considered by some people to be Conrad's masterpiece. I personally do not agree with that. I think his masterpiece, from the ones that I have read, of course, is Nostromo. And I urge you to read that because it's a fantastic novel. Heart of Darkness, as we're going to see, is not really a novel, it's a novella. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. I have some ideas on what the genre of the novella means, basically. Summarizing the story of Heart of Darkness seems a little bit ridiculous. It's very easy for you to look up a summary, and it is a very straightforward story in many ways. But just for the sake of going with the usual structure of things, it is customary to provide at least a one-line, a one-sentence summary of the story. Heart of Darkness is basically the story of a sea captain who gets a steamer and an assignment to go to the heart of Africa in the Congo through the Congo River, where he meets a very ominous character named Kurtz. So our protagonist's name is Marlowe, and he tells us the story of how he got to the heart of Africa and met this man after a very long and very difficult voyage. And many people see this story as a doppelganger story. They see Marlowe and Kurtz as shadow images, as different versions of themselves, of the same person, or maybe two sides of the same coin, that kind of thing. Some of the ideas that people have brought in, more or less fortunately, to this story are, for instance, the Freudian idea of the id. These are theories that are not en vogue anymore, but people have tried that. Jung's concept of the shadow. And even the Nietzschean idea of the Übermensch, the Superman, as it was translated until at least the Superman movies came out. So these are all ideas to keep in mind when you're looking at the relationship between Marlowe and Kurtz. Just as a side note, this was also a very influential work on T.S. Eliot. You may have read his poem, The Hollow Men. That phrase, the hollow man, comes from Heart of Darkness. And even if you look at the early versions of The Wasteland, he was planning to include a little epigraph at the very beginning with the most famous line from Heart of Darkness, which is, of course, the horror, the horror. Now, one of the first important things that I wanted to share with you, some ideas on Heart of Darkness, has to do with the genre. So I'm talking about context here, right? If you look up Heart of Darkness, you're going to see that Wikipedia or whatever says it is a novella, right? So fortunately, that is something that we understand now. Heart of Darkness is a novella. Previously, some people would refer to it as a short story. Some people would refer to it as a novel. Now we know that it is a novella. Why is this important? Why am I saying this? I think many people still don't realize what the genre of the novella actually entails. Okay, I think many people still see it as just a shorter novel in terms of length, right? So it's just a fewer pages to deal with, or in some cases they think of it as just a longish short story. That is not what the novella is. The novella you recognize by its structure. Okay. Traditionally, the novel has to do with development of character, development of themes, all those things. The short story is more associated with the idea of revelation, right? The character is revealed, or there is a surprising event towards the end of the short story. The main idea of the novella is the re-examination of a given situation. Okay, so we have a situation that is described and re-examined constantly throughout the text. You can think about it as a spiral. Okay, it's a spiral structure, and in the spiral you keep coming back to the same place, but at different levels, right? It could be a spiral that goes down, a spiral that goes up. That's another story, and the analogy does not really work that well when it comes to that. But you know what I mean, right? You keep coming back to the same place, but at different levels, in different situations. And in this case, what we have here is Marlowe's perplexity when he faces the reality of the African continent, which to him is completely foreign, right? So that is the situation that is re-examined throughout the text. If you read Heart of Darkness with that idea in mind in terms of structure, you're going to see that that is basically what keeps happening. We keep coming back to Marlowe's perplexity, but at different levels, as I said before, you know, through different examples, re-examination of a given situation. And that is what Heart of Darkness does. Another thing that many people tend to forget is that Heart of Darkness was originally published as part of a collection of tales. Nowadays you can buy it in a single book or in many different editions of Conrad's selected works, but originally it appeared in a volume titled Youth and Other Stories. It is a triptych. Youth and Other Stories is a triptych. You have 3 stories. One of them, Youth, is a short story. The remaining 2, Heart of Darkness and The End of the Tether, are novellas. So they'll basically follow the re-examination structure. And the interesting thing about this triptych is that these stories deal with the 3 ages in the life of a person. You have Youth, of course, about youth. Heart of Darkness is about middle age or maturity. And The End of the Tether is about old age. So how the characters deal with these different situations and these different times in their lives is very interesting. I think Heart of Darkness gains a lot by being read in that context, that publication context of the triptych. There are many images and many episodes that stand out in Heart of Darkness. You can think of the painting that Kurtz made of the blindfolded woman holding the torch. That is something that stands out for me. There's also the episode of the locals dying in that little forest that Marlowe encounters. I think that that is one of the saddest moments in the whole narrative. You have the attack, the arrow attack, as they're going down the river into the heart of Africa. Many episodes, but to me, interestingly, I wanted to choose just one thing to share with you, something that basically, you know, caught my attention from everything that I read in this novel. And to me, the key episode has to do with the moment that Marlowe returns to Europe. He has gone through this life-altering situation, right? It's like his life is never the same after that. And I like the way Conrad describes this feeling, this idea when you have gone through something that is shattering, emotionally devastating. It's like everything around you seems weird, seems, you know, vacuous. It seems that nothing can really, that words are not enough anymore. So let me read to you just a passage where Marlowe finds this type of sentiment. This is what the narrator says. I found myself back in the sepulchral city, resenting the sight of people hurrying through the streets to filch a little money from each other, to devour their infamous cookery, to gulp their unwholesome beer, to dream their insignificant and silly dreams. They trespassed upon my thoughts. They were intruders whose knowledge of life was to me an irritating presence, because I felt so sure they could not possibly know the things that I knew. Their bearing, which was simply the bearing of commonplace individuals going about their business in the assurance of perfect safety, was offensive to me. like the outrageous flauntings of folly in the face of a danger it is unable to comprehend. So that is my favorite passage from Heart of Darkness. It's not even an important passage, but I like to choose things that resonate with me. So I feel that he conveys that idea of being unable to go back. You cannot go back to normal after certain situations. Right now we're going through this pandemic, so this is something that unfortunately we might have to face whenever this whole thing is over, or whenever we go back to some kind of normality, whatever we will call that after this. One of the main features of Heart of Darkness, which has to do with the time that it was published, the turn of the century, right, is its ambiguity. It is contemporaneous with Henry James' The Turn of the Screw, another work that relies on ambiguity, so this is an important concept here. And one of the ways in which ambiguity has been brought up when it comes to Heart of Darkness is that many people wonder, okay, so is this a racist text? As you know, there's the Achebe controversy that you may look up in regards to Heart of Darkness. Achebe called Conrad a racist, a bloody racist. Actually, that was the term he used in the original essay, which was changed later on. So is this a racist text? This is a very complex issue, and part of the reason for that is because the text really is ambiguous. I think the best we can do in this case is we can look at Marlowe's attitudes, and we should think about this in the way that Marlowe is not really a spokesperson for the author. I know that this is a very complex issue. We can speak of the death of the author. There are many ways that we can approach this, but even looking at Marlowe, this is a complicated and problematic aspect of the novel. Marlowe is ambiguous. I think the best we can do in this case is to separate on the one hand the racial issue, and on the other hand the socio-economic issue. When it comes to race, it is obvious at many points that Marlowe really looks upon the locals as if they were inferior. His descriptions really convey that kind of an attitude or a viewpoint. On the other hand, when it comes to the socio-economic system, Conrad, Marlowe, they are very critical of colonialism, imperialism, exploitation, even capitalism, and you will find a lot of this in Nostromo, which I really recommend that you read. So I think in the racial aspect, we really don't have very progressive views here, But when it comes to socio-economic issues, these are views that really go against the accepted views of the time. So there is that courage there on the part of the narrator, Marlowe, and maybe even on the part of Conrad. I believe that is the case. There have been, if you're interested, many adaptations of Heart of Darkness, and ironically, the most memorable one obviously is not titled Heart of Darkness, but as I'm sure you know, I'm talking about Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola from 1979. This film takes the text of Heart of Darkness and applies it to the situation in the Vietnam War. So it is a commentary on, politics and war and all that. We do have here the filmmakers making a parallel between the two situations, saying, the situation in Vietnam, according to them, is parallel with the situation that was going on in the turn of the century between Africa and Europe. It's a fantastic film. I'm not going to go into that here. So look for parallels with Heart of Darkness if you see the film and you have not seen it yet. And also look for parallels with the Odyssey. There are many that you can find there. In 1993, there was an adaptation for TV by Nicholas Roeg, who made The Man Who Fell to Earth, Insignificance, Don't Look Now, many classic films. This version has not been well received if you look at reviews online, but I would check it out. It stars Tim Roth and John Malkovich. It's an adaptation of the novel that adds a little bit of politics to it too. More recently, I just saw the other day the movie The Lost City of Z, and this is based on another text by an explorer, right? But you can see many parallels between Heart of Darkness and the experiences of this other explorer in the movie The Lost City of Z. You can even see a part where they are attacked, they suffer an arrow attack, just as in the novel by Conrad. So very, very good film by James Gray. I really like this filmmaker, so I recommend that you watch this film by itself, right? Not because it has anything to do with Heart of Darkness. And I just found out also that apparently an animated version will be released in the following years. So, you know, something to look forward to when it comes to Heart of Darkness. So I hope that these comments add to your appreciation of the novel. This is one of my favorite novels for many reasons, and I hope that if you're new to Conrad, I hope that you will give him a chance after reading Heart of Darkness too. Nostromo is his masterpiece. I really do believe that, for many reasons that I'm not going to go into now. Another text that is often assigned to students is Lord Jim, which is a medium-length novel, maybe 300 pages. There are also many points of contact with Heart of Darkness. I see it as a longer version of Heart of Darkness. You also have the oral narrative, all that kind of stuff. I see it as a longer version of Heart of Darkness, but it doesn't have the same power, and I think it has to do with the fact that at the center of that novel you have a good character, whereas at the center of Heart of Darkness you have an evil one. And when it comes to literature, you know, sometimes people favor descriptions of evil for the same reason that people prefer to read Dante's Inferno, and many, you know, very few people read his Paradise, because evil is in a way more interesting, if we can say that. So read Nostromo. I really recommend that one. Also, another one you might want to check out is The Secret Agent. It's a novel about politics and about well, I don't want to spoil it for you. Check out The Secret Agent. That's another novel by Conrad that I truly enjoyed. So hopefully this adds to your experience of Heart of Darkness. And I want to finish with a cliche. This is not even my idea, so I don't know whoever said it first. Many people did this. They compare the text to the jungle itself, right? This text is so dense, this narrative. It is so thick that it is almost as if you, the reader, are going through the jungle and trying to get to the heart of this text, where you have the meeting with Kurtz and all that kind of stuff, and where you have your own personal meetings, your own personal epiphanies, which is what happens when we really get into any kind of text, and that's part of the beauty of reading. So thank you for your patience. This is my first video. Hopefully these will get a lot better with time. So I hope that you find something in this channel that speaks to you. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful day.